Okay, so this is me just moving in my new place not too long ago, getting everything set up. Sorry, it's been a while since I've posted any new content. Um, I wanted to do a video specifically tonight on something Sneaker Axe posted that I kind of started commenting on, but I want to expand on, and it's not necessarily going to be what you think. So he posted, even if you think you aren't qualified for a job, apply anyway. Number one, you might get don't underestimate yourself. Number two, interviewing is a skill worth practicing like any other. Number three, there's no better way to find out where you stand. I agree with all three of those statements. The thing I'm expanding on isn't going to be just the interviewing process. I mentioned that in my own. I retweeted his tweet saying, the worst case scenario is you get intel as you interview at more places. You're getting more reps in, and the other side of the coin is interviews are a two-way street. It's just like talking to a roommate. And if nothing else gets you out of the mode of being nervous for an interview, is thinking of it as you're interviewing the company too. You could be, even if you're qualified, you may not, there may be some red flag or something that goes off in your head that you may want to acknowledge, and maybe consider another place. So, but that's not what I want to talk about. The thing I want to talk about specifically, because I've been on both sides of the interview table, and from junior roles all the way up to senior roles in IT, and then some security roles. The thing I'm going to talk about is the other side of the table, the interviewer. Now, from my experience from interviewing people, and I'm not going to get into all the, everybody talks about the idea of how to prepare for an interview from the interviewee's perspective, like how you get ready for an interview. The thing in this talk is going to go for those that do the interviewing is the things I noticed most commonly in a lot of interviews is from interviewing and just kind of being an outsider is there's a couple of types you'll notice in interviews, especially when you're being interviewed by more than one person. And these are common mistakes. So one of those types is the person that wants to be heard, or when you get the personality type that wants to, they have this thing where they want to try and stump you. It's a weird thing, and I think it comes from ego, and I've seen this. Then you get the other person that's, if you get two of these people in an interview that are interviewing you, might be a red flag, and you might pick up on certain things. I've seen this when I was one of my first times interviewing someone. I wasn't there in person. It was all over a conference call, and I'm listening to my coworkers interview this person. This is like my first one, and these guys, it's almost like they not only were they trying to stump this guy to kind of show off how smart they were, but they started arguing with each other during the interview. Like that's a huge. If you go into interview seeing this and you're being interviewed, that may be a sign that that's definitely a red flag. One of the other times I've seen where somebody would ask questions that didn't necessarily pertain to the interview, and a lot of it was just to stump the person. And it wasn't like, you get times where you segue from one conversation to another interview when you get asked a question, like you start talking about networking, then you're starting talking about, you pivot over to a firewall conversation or something AD related, whatever. But you get some that will like they'll ask a bunch of questions that may not even pertain to the job. They're just literally trying to stump you to see, and you get some elements of that where interviewers will they're kind of like testing to see what you do under stress. Just one thing, but sometimes it's not just succinct, and it eats up a lot of time. The thing I've found most effective for myself from interviewing people has been coming up with a certain set of questions, and sometimes I've gotten this because it was mandated by HR recruiting or my managers saying, like, come up with, have your questions ready and then go. But sometimes in cases where we're trying to fill up a role fast or interviewing a lot of people in a short amount of time, it was just easy for me to come up with 4 or 5 questions, maybe meeting with your team before doing the interview, And then that way, what you do when you're getting a bunch of candidates coming in, you have your cookie cutter set of questions. You can kind of gauge based on those questions how good candidate A versus candidate B did. And it makes it so much it takes the thinking process out, so you're not in there kind of nervous and sweating trying to figure out what to ask next or how to hold the conversation next. The other thing I've done was that was helpful was, and then like I said, having these discussions is helpful. There's a challenge that comes with this though, because especially if you're trying to backfill a role, you're in that crunch of, oh, the company's going to get their budget, blah 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 blah, and they're going to get that money back if they don't hire that person or whatever. Some sort of thing will prevent it's like you got to react quickly, and ideally you want to interview hard or not necessarily hire someone after one. Hire after the first candidate you interview. You want to get about 3 or 4 in, and make sure you get a lot of questions in. The next thing I've noticed with interviewing was there were times where I could schedule it well, and if I'd have it good schedule well in advance. But there's times where I'd be coming out of a meeting or doing some maintenance, and my manager would be like, "Hey, can you interview this guy real quick?" Wait, what? So, and that's not fair to the candidate, to be honest. It's kind of disrespectful because and these one of those times. Luckily, I had questions written down, ready to go. But there have been times where, you're coming in and out of another meeting or some other thing, and as an interviewer, it's distracting. And for me, I like to have a few minutes to clear my head before I go in an interview. I don't want to come off of like an 18-hour shift of doing maintenance and somebody not communicating. One of those snafu days that we all get in this field. I wouldn't want to come in and interview like that. Like ultimately, I look at it as I'm taking the time of the person interviewing very seriously. I'm a big proponent of valuing time, whether it's my own or somebody else's. So, having a plan helps. The other thing I'll notice as far as the interview questions go, I tend to go somewhat where you had to have read a manual or two or something, but a lot of my interviewing questions lean more towards a been there, done that, like something that you're not necessarily going to find in a book. And I've seen some people, but I have seen some people that are interview, they'll go this deep with a question on a product, and I'm all for the technical questions, but there's a line where I think to myself, okay, do they know the product, or because you could arguably read the brochure or talk to a salesperson, they're going to regurgitate all that same stuff. Oh, this does this and this and this and this and this and this and this. But I'd rather see, I like the whole, what did you do in this weird situation, or asking a question where nothing's broken, but what's the problem? There's something else going on. Just to see, I sometimes kind of like seeing the body language, and I kind of like I've observed and done a little bit of reading up on that stuff, and that's been kind of interesting. Just seeing what and I feel like I've done pretty good about who I've interviewed in general, and this is from a lot of different roles. Because I've seen some that will just freeze up, and I'm not just, some people just need to get more reps in. That's why I was saying it's good to interview a lot and get some experience in, and sometimes for jobs you're not qualified for, because at the very least you start learning what you need to know, the real stuff you need to know, not the get mile long of certification, but the actual tangible skills for job X. Anyway, I didn't want to make this too long. This is me getting back on the saddle with the video content. I'll be making some more Binary Ninja videos soon. With that out of the way, hope you have a good night, and cheers.